What's up, Internet? We are here with the Nintendo GameCube, a console I've been meaning to actually make a collection video on for a while. I've been dealing with some personal issues and some family medical stuff's come up during this pandemic, and, well, 2020, it's a great year, isn't it? Yeah, not really. Anyway, the Nintendo GameCube is a console that will forever remain in my mind because, well, first of all, it was the first console I ever bought with my own money when I was like 10. I remember the day I bought it, and it will never forget. I will never forget that time. It was a crisp Saturday morning in October, about a week before Halloween. I had just finished watching Kirby Right Back at Ya on Fox Kids, and bear in mind, I have a terrible memory, so how I remember any of this is kind of a miracle. But that was the only time, Saturday morning on Fox Kids, it was the only time you could watch cartoons in Canada that wasn't on Teletoon or YTV, so I had to enjoy that. And I got a phone call from some random adults. So here's what random adults wanted to call a 10-year-old for. My dad, when he wasn't working in construction, he would try and fix up and sell cars. Well, in some bizarre, misguided attempt to connect with me that he never really bothered with, he ended up getting like a little, like, gas-powered sled or something, and he wanted me to try and sell it and fix it up with him, but that never really happened. But I still managed to sell it, so welcome to my family connections. They're not great, but I did make money, and I made enough to take a trip to Zeller's and to buy a GameCube. But buying a GameCube back then was really weird. Like, I don't know if it was just like you had to buy it this way because there was limited numbers, so you had to go through extra hoops or something, but it's something I'm glad we never had to deal with since, because, and this was at an actual, like, official retailer, mind you, to buy a GameCube, you had to buy it entirely piecemeal. So you had to buy the GameCube, you had to buy the AV cable, the power cable, you had to buy the controller, you had to buy the memory card, you had to buy the game, and you had to do that all in one purchase or they would not sell one to you, and it didn't come bundled early on, and I have no idea why. It's the most baffling thing. But I got my GameCube. It was a week before Halloween, so I got a bag of Halloween candy, and I got to stay the night at a family friend's house where I stayed up with their kid there, and we stayed up till 3 a.m., which when you're 10 is a big deal. And we ate Halloween candy, we played Sonic Adventure 2, we stopped at King Boom Boom, and we crashed at 3 a.m. in the KO Garden, and woke up to find that I had a hero KO, he had a dark KO, and they're still alive on my memory card to this date, despite the fact that I have literally thousands upon thousands of hours in that game. Like, I've broken the timer in that, I've played so much of it. So, the GameCube, kind of an important one for me. Anyway, time to get to the games, you know, the meat and potatoes of what you care about. We're starting with Amazing Island, a game that is anything but. And, you know, it's funny I bring up that guy I played Sonic Adventure 2 with day one. He got this for me on my birthday at the actual exact same Walmart. Figure that out. Like, 5 years after this, I'm pretty sure the Wii was out at this point when I got this, but this game is crap. It's got such a great idea and such potential, and it's absolutely awful. So Amazing Island is a game where you get to customize and create your own monsters by drawing them, inflating them, and then slapping accessories and weapons and stuff on them, and then you get to go on super awesome adventures! And by super awesome adventures, this game means knockoff Mario Party mini games that suck and make me sad. I remember the moments I got this and I went home and I went to school the next day, I was complaining about how bad this was and how I wish there was an actual, like, adventure element to Amazing Island. And someone who was within earshot of me mentioned, you know, that game does exist. It's called Graffiti Kingdom. And while Graffiti Kingdom is far from the best PS2 game I've ever played, that was basically Amazing Island, if Amazing Island was done well. Also, it's really convenient I'm next to my box of games I got this year so that I could just pull out Graffiti Kingdom on a whim like that. Anyway, Amazing Island, it's anything but. Now the next game we've got, this one's going to be a total shocker, no one's going to see this one coming, but I got this little obscure game no one's ever heard of called Animal Crossing. So yeah, Animal Crossing, this is a game I have spent so many hours in. I mean, so many hours just last year on this. I've got a whole playlist, just go watch that. I love Animal Crossing. This is my original disc I got the day before my birthday. And that was an interesting little proposition because what basically happened was my mom and dad forgot that my birthday was happening. it wouldn't be the first time that happens. But, you know, they got one of their drinking friends to go out to, and I shit you not, the exact same Zellers to get me something the day before my birthday, and they gave it to me at 9 p.m. Well, I got Animal Crossing, and that worked out pretty well for me, honestly, because Animal Crossing was a game that every day after school I would come home and I would watch over and over again the, like, I think they were IGN produced, but I'm not sure. They were like these weird reality show spoof ads for this game where people were in like these really bad Animal Crossing mascot uniforms, and they were talking about the stuff you could do in this game. Really awkward advertising, probably would never happen again, but I loved it. And because it was 9 p.m. the day before my birthday, everything was closed, I couldn't do anything with it. But the next day, when I woke up, I turned on my GameCube, and boom, my two favorite villagers of all time, Pierce and Pearl, were at my door to give me my very first NES game, a copy of Balloon Fight. That's pretty cool to me. That will always be a very personal memory that I will never forget. I love Animal Crossing. It's a great game. It's a great series. I own most of it except for the Wii U board game thing, the phone thing that I can't run because my phone's a piece of crap, and the Wii one. But nothing will ever top the original, mainly because it's the only one that has NES games. Alright, next we have a game I really, really like, but I've never finished, mostly because of development stuff. But we have Batoncades, the Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean. This is one of the more noteworthy RPGs on the system, not that there were that many. And this game, it's been forever since I played this, but from what I remember, it had like this really cool card system where everything, like including items, were cards, and some could expire over time, others could be applied for like combo attacks in combat. It was a really neat idea, and I only got it for 12 bucks at GameStop. I wish they had the sequel, or rather the prequel, and that's actually why I stopped playing this. I was having a blast with this game, but then I heard there was a prequel, and I couldn't find it. And because I was only getting like half the story, that kind of stopped me, and this game's actually really expensive now, so, yeah. But this was a really cool RPG. I want to get back into it, I really do, but I still want to get the full story before I do. I think, if I may pop this open for a minute. Huh. Okay, this is one of the 2-disc games on the GameCube. I thought it felt a little heavy when I picked it up. This makes it one of 3 games on the GameCube I have that actually features 2 discs in the set. That's a little neat thing I didn't know too much about. Alright, next we have a really obscure Sega platformer that is really jank, but I kind of love. We have Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg. This game is not great, but I remember the first time I played it, I had an absolute blast. You play a guy running around in a chicken suit trying to hatch eggs in a sort of vaguely Mario 64 fashion. But it had sort of a Banjo-Kazooie vibe to it too, where you had to go through the same level multiple times, but every time you went into it, it would have like a different permutation and different events and different stuff to collect. And your goal was to get like golden chicken emblems or something, I forget. But there was billions and billions of different eggs. There was Sonic Team inspired eggs where you could get Sonic the Hedgehog and like Nights and Dreams in here. There was Game Boy Advance connected mini games you could play, which it was one of the few games I had that did have that, including Animal Crossing, which was actually the reason I got that piece of crap adapter. But, you know, I liked Billy Hatcher. I played it again a few years ago for gameplay footage, and it was, honestly, subpar at best. But I still think it's a pretty interesting platformer for the GameCube, and you can't get Billy Hatcher any other way. It's a GameCube exclusive, so that's pretty cool. Alright, our next game is a game I've done a full Let's Play of. We have Bomberman Generation. Now, I don't like this game. I remember kind of liking it because it was sort of like a better version from what I could remember of Bomberman Jets, but it had like mini games and stuff. Having to play this game again for the Let's Play I did like 2 years ago, I hate this game. I hate those mini games too. They're stupidly difficult and you have to complete them to get collectibles. But it is a Bomberman adventure game, and I do love Bomberman adventure games, but damn it, they weren't good after the N64. But this was at least another Bomberman adventure game, and that makes me happy in some degree, although not by much. But what can you do? Following that up, we have Bomberman Jets. I played this one before Bomberman Generation. I remember Bomberman Generation being shown off like everywhere. I saw it like in the back of booklets and in like magazines and stuff, but no one ever talked about Jets. And I wanted to try Generations for the longest time, couldn't, found Jets, played it, and I hated it. And part of the reason why I hated it is I rented it from a Rogers Video, and I think their copy was messed up or something, because every time it would save to my memory card, it wouldn't be able to read its own save data. Like, my save data was just gone. So, yeah, I had to kind of beat this game in one sitting when I was a kid, and I didn't like that. Playing it again for the Let's Play and actually being able to save, it's not much better. It really isn't. It's, again, it's trying to be the Bomberman 64 games, but not without any modicum of competency. But what can you do? It's it is what it is. It's 3D Bomberman. It's okay, but it's not great. I think it's better than Bomberman Generation, which is like a flipped opinion of what I had when I was a kid, but not terribly fantastic. Alright, next we have a game I've only played briefly, but I absolutely loved it. Been meaning to review this for a long time. We have Crash Nitro Kart Racing. This game I got completely for free. A few years ago I got my original Xbox and I had no games for it, right? And a buddy of mine, Zach, who's shown up on a couple of videos, he told me he was going to sell me a bunch of his games, and in that box of games he also included a free copy of Crash Nitro Kart, which I think was to make up for the fact he also included a copy of Disney's Sports Skateboarding, which is one of the most abysmal things I've ever had to play on the GameCube. But this is a pretty fun little kart racer. I never played the original Crash Team Racing. I've not played the remake of it. But I remember thinking this game was a lot of fun. Ironically, a little earlier that year, I also got the Game Boy Advance version, which I played a little bit as well, and that was okay. But if you're looking for a fun little racing game on the GameCube, you could do worse than this. I don't think it's quite as good as, say, like Kirby Air Ride, but it's up there, I think. It's one of the better racing games. Alright, next we have, what is this? Oh, okay, so, fun story. We got an empty case, and there's a bit of a story behind this, but this actually happened a week ago. And a week ago, I was walking by my old elementary school, and by my old elementary school, there was a, what is it? It was sort of like a Goodwill donations bin, and they have this huge sign that says, "Don't leave stuff outside, it's going to rot, it's going to get destroyed, and it's only there for scavengers. We don't take stuff that's not in the bin." And of course no one listens and dumps everything out there anyway. But you know, I was walking by and I thought I saw something that looked like a silver GameCube. And it wasn't, it was actually a speaker. But what I also found while I was there was a propped up box from the old board game of Connect 4. And that old board game was also being propped up with a box of Fleshed Away. This was just tucked away in a copy of Tic-Tac-Toe or Connect 4 or whatever. And it was weird to see this. I opened up the thing, you know, and there was nothing in it. So I was like, well, it's a movie game. I like Aardman animation, but I've never seen this one. But it's a movie game, can't be good, whatever. It's a free case. And, well, 2 days later, no, 2 days, 2 weeks later, I was walking around in the middle of a field about a mile away, and I found something shiny just off in the middle of the field. We have a copy of Fleshed Away. I haven't had a chance to play this, but I found this random disc sitting in the middle of a field miles away from, you know, where I found the box for it. So someone took it out and started winging it around like a frisbee, I guess, but it seems to be able to work. It seems to be in good condition. But, yeah. But the reason why that's important, and this was actually in an empty case for Gremlins in the exact same donation spot, but that's important because this is the case for Fleshed Away. It's now housing Cubivor, Survival of the Fittest, which is one of the more interesting GameCube games. It was a launch title no one remembers, which is a shame. It's by Atlas, and it could only be described as a Darwinism game. I've actually got a couple videos on this game already, and it's one of the most expensive GameCube games you can find. But this was supposed to be originally a very, very, very late GameCube game. GameCube N64 game. And it kind of shows a little bit, but the idea is you play like this little monster cube thing, trying to eat other monster cubes, rip off their limbs, eat them, and grow your own limbs to become the greatest cube monster thing ever, because Darwinism. And then find a mate so that you can mate, pass on your genetics, and start a new generation and stuff. It was a very strange game, and no one remembers it, but it was a launch title, and I think it was a very, very remarkable game for the GameCube, even though no one knows about it, and it's so hard to find and so expensive that very few people are going to get the chance to, I think, at least legitimately. But if you can find a copy of Cubivor, give it a shot. It's pretty damn fun. Alright, next we have a game I've only played like twice, honestly. We have Custom Robo. And I'm a big Custom Robo fan. This is what I started with, and of course, if you're like me and anyone else, your introduction to Custom Robo was through the character model viewer in Smash Bros. Melee, which looked like a fun sort of 3D adventure thing with these cute robots. Well, for the only one we got in North America for consoles anyway, they decided to go for a darker, grimmer, grittier tone, and I hated that. I thought it looked bland and boring, and I rented it once, played through it, thought it was not great. And I got this actually a couple of years ago before my uncle left his job. One of his coworkers said, "Hey, I'm looking to sell a bunch of games. Would you be interested?" And he said, "No, but my nephew would be." And that's an interesting story as well. He decided, you know, he talked to me about this, and his coworker showed up one day with like a giant basket of GBA games that they were selling for $2 a piece. And my uncle called me that night and he cried saying, "Oh no, I bought 20 of these. I hope he's not too mad that I spent so much of his money." It's like, I would have taken all of them. But the next day, his coworker came to work and listed off a bunch of games he had, and he called me over his lunch hour. Super, super nice of him to waste his lunch hour with that. And he lists a bunch of them. And the last thing he lists is Custom Robo, just nonchalantly for $1. It's like, really? That's hard to find, and I've been wanting a copy forever. I did a What the Hell Is on This, I believe, way back in the day, and it was better than I remember, but I still think the N64 ones are better, just from a purely aesthetic standpoint. I think this controls better because it's got a better controller that isn't the terrible GameCube controller, but it's still not great. But Custom Robo is the only one we ever got in English for consoles. There was a DS one that is the only one in the series I'm missing. And it was like a 3D third-person shooter, top-down, sort of isometric fighter type thing. It's hard to describe this game. I've got a couple reviews on Custom Robo out there. Go watch them. But it's a fun and remarkable series. And if you can get the GameCube one that we had in English, if nothing else, it's noteworthy for that. Because this is a series that mostly stayed in Japan. So the fact we got this was pretty huge. Even though I think it's kind of inferior in a lot of ways to the N64 ones that I've already talked about. And finally, for our first stack, it had to show up eventually, Disney Sports Skateboarding. This is one of the worst GameCube games I've ever played. I was talking to my buddy Zach about this, because I got this for free from him, and he said he had a copy, and and he wanted to send it to me. The thing is, the game I was talking about was actually a different Disney skateboarding game, if you can believe it. It was a game called Disney Extreme Skateboard Adventure, which was literally a Tony Hawk's game reskinned with Disney characters. Whereas this is Disney trying to create their own skate engine and make it really radical and stuff. All the characters feel really out of place. They feel like they're not supposed to be skateboarding. There's like this really awkward narrator, announcer type person who's just shouting over everything that makes me hate this game even more. It is awkward to control, it is just bad, and to be fair, I'm awful at these skateboard games, but this is the worst controlling one I have ever played. This game is awful, and I hear the rest of the Disney Sports line isn't any better, which is terrifying, because I'm going to have to get them at some point to talk about them, just because I want to talk about everything. But this was a fun little goof my buddy gave to me. And it was funny because, you know, before he even gave it to me, he said, "Hey, my brother got this at a yard sale for $1, and it made him want his dollar back. This was like the worst thing he ever played." So, you know what? We're all in agreement. Disney Sports Skateboarding is abysmal. And that is the first stack. Alright, and we're continuing with stack number B, or rather G, for Gauntlet Dark Legacy. This was a game I got from my girlfriend, and this is actually one of her favorite games of all time, so I gotta take extra super special care of it. But this is a game that I was very, very excited to play, and it's good. It's been a while since I played it, and I remember a lot of people getting upset at me for going a little bit too negative on my review, but I stand by what I said. It's not a perfect game, but what it is a decent enough evolution of Gauntlet into the 3D space, and with a metric crap ton of unlockables. Like seriously, every character you get unlocks another character, which will unlock a later character, which unlocks more characters. If you want everything in this game, you'll be spending so many hours playing. I really want to play this again, just for reflection, but also because I want to play this with my girlfriend at some point. But This game, I don't think it was as good as I was excited for it to be and as much as people hyped it up to be, but I think it was a fun and interesting sort of creation of Gauntlet, and it is a very dark game. It feels tonally a little bit similar to Dark Souls in terms of environments. Like, it's very dark, it's very grim in some places, and it can be quite beautiful in some places as well. It's very arcadey though, and I think that was what I didn't expect. I think I expected it to be a little bit more adventure-y, but you know, what can you do? It was decent, but not as great as I'd expected. Alright, next we have a game that isn't even that. We have Geist. This is a GameCube exclusive FPS for $1, and it has such a cool premise. You play a ghost ripped out of the body of like a scientist who was in with like a SWAT team investigating like this weird paranormal like terrorist cell or something. And now you have to like sneak around this facility possessing stuff and solving puzzles and stuff to ultimately get out of there and get your body back. And man, it's such a cool concept, and there's some actual like legitimately cool moments in this game. Like if you want to possess something, you have to actually like scare it. Like you have to like weaken its spirit so much that you can pop in and be like the dominant spirit in any body, which is interesting. And yet, it just feels like there's so much more it could have done with it. This is like a sequel to The Haunting starring Poltergeist, except not as good. Which makes it a really, really inferior version of Space Station Silicon Valley in the skin of an FPS. Not the biggest fan of Geist, honestly. It cost me $1, wasn't great. But next is a game that is great. In fact, it's probably my best, favoritist exclusive GameCube game of all time. And like before, I have myself a couple of special guests to present. We happen to have Shadow Girl and Killer Girl of the Assault Team in Gotcha Force. This is a game I own like the monopoly of videos on the internet for, and damn it, I deserve it. It's a great game, and honestly, I made that series just to prove how big a fan of this game I was. It is a Capcom fighting game that plays a little bit differently, unless you play the Gundam Versus games, in which case it plays like that, but if you're familiar with the more recent Gundam Versus games, this plays infinitely better. Also, it has some really rare action figures that are like my favorite collectibles I've ever gotten. But Gotcha Force is probably my favorite GameCube exclusive game. This was a game that showed me I could find a fighting game that I liked. Going back to the start of my channel, this was one of the earliest reviews I ever made, and, well, when I was a kid, I was super afraid of robots. You can watch my videos, and I actually talk about this a little bit. But I wanted to play robot games to try and make me feel braver about it, because when you're what you fear most, it's encouraging and empowering. But every robot game I played sucked. Heavy Nova is like the worst game in the world I've ever played, with possibly the exception of Element Knights R. That game is abysmal. Robotica, that is one of the worst FPSs I've ever played, bar none. What else? Rise of the Robots, one of the most inept fighting games of all time. I didn't play robot games until I played Gotcha Force, really. And wow, Gotcha Force was like the one outlier, and it was the one that was really, really damn good. I've been thinking about doing a full Let's Play of this game just because I love it so much, and it has been a while since I played this game. I used to play it every week for my channel, and I might have to do it again because, damn it, just thinking about it's making me grin from ear to ear. This is one of the best GameCube games of all time. It's the best GameCube exclusive of all time, as far as I'm concerned. And it's really unfortunate that this is rare and expensive now. Like, I got this a week after launch, sealed for $5 because no one knew what it was, no one wanted it, and now it's like several $100s. Which is unfortunate, because if this ever breaks, I'm going to be very exceptionally sad. But Gotcha Force, damn good game, and you know what, we're gonna have our Gotcha Borgs hang out up here, and hopefully they don't fall apart, because they are a wee bit fragile. But next we have a series I'm really fond of, and a game a lot of people speak very highly of, and I hate it. Next we have Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life, what I would consider to be one of the worst Harvest Moon games of all time. So the thing about Harvest Moon is, it's a life sim. You get a farm, you have to live your life, do what you want, sell stuff, you know, go on adventures, whatever. Except that this game completely dictates your life for you. First of all, unlike a lot of Harvest Moon games, this game has an end. And spoilers, it ends like most lives end, with your death. But the first chapter is literally you have to try and get a wife by the end of your first year, and by then you're married. And then after every chapter after that is literally you trying to influence what your kid likes, because he's gonna have more adventures than you ever did because you're Captain Boring Pants. And the thing is, if you don't like any of the characters that you could marry, and bear in mind there was one character I really wanted to marry that I couldn't because plot. I like the archaeologist lady, but what can you do? You know, if you don't have any love or affection for any of the characters, the game says, that's alright, we will randomly assign you one. You have no choice, you have to get married, you have to have a kid, because that dictates the rest of your game. Enjoy. And the sad thing is, there's actually some really cool stuff in here. Like, there's a secret plant you can get that is an actual character, and you talk to him, you hand him other plant seeds, and he'll hybridize them to sell, like, super plants. But honestly, I just hate this game so much. It looks good and it has a great soundtrack, but it just has so few features and it forces you into what you do. And it's terrible and I hate every moment of it. Honestly, the only reason I bought this was because Harvest Moon Friends in Mineral Town, the remake of the PS1 Back to Nature, had Game Boy connectivity, as it says in the corner. And if you connected that to here, you could get a house on the beach. And I wanted that. And that was the only reason I own A Wonderful Life. Next we have another Harvest Moon game that I don't know, somewhat ambivalent towards, I guess. We have Harvest Moon Magical Melody. This game, I don't know, it's better than A Wonderful Life, I'll say that much, but it has its issues. For one thing, this is the one that started the whole trend of collecting shit. Like, this is the Harvest Moon for collecting stuff, and the one that made pretty much every Harvest Moon after this a story about collecting X number of plot MacGuffins in order to beat the game. Basically, people stopped for believing in the harvest goddess, so you have to wander around collecting magical notes that are given to you basically as achievements, and if you get enough, then you can revive the harvest goddess and, you know, whatever. The sad thing is, this is actually a pretty cool Harvest Moon game, but it has so much I don't like about it. Like, for one thing, it just feels very, very clunky, and it feels like a very low-budget game. Especially compared to A Wonderful Life. And I'm not just talking presentation, but I mean your character just feels very clumsy and clunky, and like no one bothered to test it all that much. But what's weird is 90% of the characters in this game are reused from different Harvest Moon games. They did not include the best girl, Karen, which is bullshit. And, you know, it's a weird combination of characters from Harvest Moon 64 and Back to Nature, as well as the original Harvest Moon, which is really bizarre. But I remember this game having something else, which is every time you talk to characters, they'd have like a soundbite they'd play, and they were always the worst, most obnoxious things ever. There was a guy who literally goes, yo, every time you talk to him, and it's like, go away, I hate you. And there's another guy that goes, yo, every time you talk to him, and it's like, can I turn this off, please? You know, I don't mind collecting stuff for the sake of, you know, having an adventure, sure. I don't mind the fact that my character is, my character's rival is so androgynous that he's a woman if I play a girl, or a man if I play a girl, and a woman if I play a guy, so I can get married to him no matter what. I don't have a problem running around making friends with a billion different people, and potentially losing people if they're not friendly enough, because there's a lot of like really stupid like background number nonsense going on with this game that dictates who shows up and who doesn't, and who leaves. And getting them back's all a pain. This game has a lot of issues. Alright, our next game is a game I reviewed and a lot of people might make fun of me for having, but it's actually not a bad little game. We have Hello Kitty Roller Rescue. This is a weird 3D kind of skating around, I guess sort of beat 'em up platformer type thing. It's by Namco, and it features Hello Kitty on roller skates where you can get different dress 'em up outfits for her and stuff, so you can make her a different skating magical girl of your choice. From what I recall, they're like evil robots who take over Sanrio Town and kidnap villagers and whatever, and you have to go stop them, and like every world is a little bit different. There's like a world inside a freezer, and there's a world in a park, and there's like a world where you have to fight a train, and one where you have to fight a giant robot. It's a really varied experience. It's a clunky experience, but I gotta say, Hello Kitty Roller Rescue, if you look at this, you might think, why do you own this? This game looks dumb, it looks bad. It's a lot more fun than you think. It's not a top tier game by any means or measure, but I have to admit I do have very much a soft spot for Hello Kitty Roller Rescue. It's the second Sanrio game I own, and both have yet to fail me. Alright, next we have a game I'm actually quite familiar with, but I've not played this version. We have Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess was my very first Wii game, and I actually got this like last year at a Goodwill when this was shoved into the DVD section for reasons. I got this for like $1 or something. I haven't played it because I'm not really the biggest Twilight Princess fan. I think it's good, but I have issues with it. The first one is the whole game is about turning into Link and into Wolf Link and stuff, and everyone knows that. But the thing is, I never thought the wolf played all that fun. Like, honestly, if I want to play a wolf version of Zelda, I will go and play Okami. That's literally what that game is. Except I think it was better done. It was a lot more ambitious. It was prettier, had a better soundtrack. It was just better in every way. This game also had a lot of really weird tools that you never used more than once. And I know Zelda gets a lot of flack for its equipment not always being super useful, but like the giant spinny top platform, I think outside the dungeon you get it in is used twice. Once in the final dungeon, and once to get a heart piece. Like that's it. That said, this also has one of my favorite dungeons in all of Zelda, which is, spoilers, but there's this giant ice cathedral, and like the entire thing is, you're just hanging out with the master of the mansion trying to find his wife, and like every step of the way, instead of finding like keys or tools or stuff, you find like little ingredients for soup. And I thought that was such a novel concept. And what was great about that dungeon was when you fought the sub-boss and you got like the tool of the dungeon, it wasn't you kill this guy, you open a chest, you get something. No, you fight a giant guy that has a giant freaking mace flail thing, and then he dies and leaves his weapon and you just take it. That doesn't happen in Zelda. I think that was quite a novel concept, and I thought it was really, really good. But of course I also played the Wii version, which also had a bunch of waggle stuff, which I didn't care for. This version's actually notable because, well, first of all, it's the original version, but it's the version that didn't monkey with stuff because it's the original. The Wii version, quite notably, has Link as a right-handed character. Or much more accurately, as I understand, they actually just mirrored the entire game. Because they didn't want to remake Link as a righty, because Link is always a lefty. And I guess they wanted to make the Wii swinging feel more natural, even though it's hardly immersive or anything, you know. But, you know, this was pushing Wii stuff, so we have to make it feel like, you know, your sword swings are one-to-one and nonsense. But this is the original non-monkeyed with version, and the version to get, really. Unless you've got, like, the Wii U version, I guess. But, you know, this is the OG version. It's the version I care to have. Alright, next we have a copy of one of the most timeless Zeldas of all time. One that I don't think anyone would ever make an HD version of because it would be the stupidest thing ever, but we have Wind Waker. Oh wait, they made an HD version of it. Why did they make an HD version of this? It's cel-shaded, it was stylized, it didn't need that. My actual acquisition of this was kind of interesting because originally I was supposed to get my girlfriend's copy, and when she sent her games to me when I traded her some stuff, her copy of Wind Waker was just removed at customs for some reason and never put back. So she, being the amazingly generous person she is, went out of her way to get me a second copy. And I love Wind Waker. It is a timeless Zelda. It is one of the best aged Zeldas, I think. It's one that doesn't need an HD remaster and somehow has one. But if I had one complaint with it, it's got sort of like the Red Dead Redemption problem of it's got a giant open world that's filled with nothing in it because you've got the open sea, and yeah, that's accurate, but it's also boring. This game feels really empty, and to travel around the overworld you have to sit in your boat, and it just feels slow and clumsy. And that's why in the HD version they actually have the ability to speed yourself up in the boat, which is okay. That I'll give you that HD version, you needed that. But it's hyper stylized and a ton of fun, and I think Wind Waker is one of the coolest Zelda games. My introduction to this was a little bit less than standard, which made me initially think a little bit less of this game though. As with a lot of people back in the day, I think we all saw the Space World announcement where they showed what a Zelda would look like if it was running on GameCube hardware, which was, you know, just a reimagining of Link fighting Ganon from Ocarina. And the first time I saw that footage was spliced together with Wind Waker footage. So the way I understood it was the first half of the game you were going to be like in this cel-shaded adventure kid version, and then the latter half you'd fight Ganon as adult Link in like this, at the time at least, kind of realistic, you know, like photorealistic mode, quote unquote. That was not the case, but I remember that video. It started off with this, it cut to that, then it went back to this, and then it used the opening theme to A Link to the Past. And if anyone can find that video, I'd like to see it again, just out of nostalgia. But Wind Waker, it's timeless, it's a great Zelda game, and I'm glad I have it. Right now I'm just missing the 2 Zelda collections and the really awkward first first person, the single player Four Swords game, but that game wasn't very great anyway. Although ironically, all my friends have them. They have all the collections except for me, and I'm bitterly jealous. Anyway, next we have Metroid Infinity, or whatever this is called. This is Metroid Infinity. It was the Metroid GameCube game, the 3rd Metroid console game, and the only console game we got. I'm a huge fan of Metroid. I've made a review of it. I'm planning on making more, honestly, because I got like almost the full set. But it's weird because we got 3 Metroid games in North America, and only one of them actually played like Metroid. It's supposed to be an RPG, but one of them was a weird knockoff fighting game, and the other was this weird sort of top-down third-person shooty mabob. It's not very good. I remember this game being very, very clumsy, very, very clunky, but I do have a story with this. This was sitting behind the counter at a mall very, very far away from my house, and I saw it there over the course of a year, and they wanted like 20 bucks for it, and it sat there for years and years and years, and then it actually ended up in a bargain bin at my local mall, because I guess they were consolidating their stuff. And again, they wanted 20 bucks for it, and I said, okay, look, I'm interested in you. If you ever get below $10, I'll buy you. And no one picked it up. Boom, $5, got it, and it was disappointing. But it's part of my Metroid collection, and as I am trying to collect them all, it's kind of a big deal to me. Alright, so now we have the final one of stack number B, which is Mega Man Anniversary Collection. And this was actually my introduction to most of Mega Man, because while I played the X games and I played Mega Man 7 when I was a kid, in fact it was the game I rented more than anything else as a kid, I still need to get a copy. I didn't have an NES, so I couldn't play any of the other ones. I got this one, and it was on the weekend. Again, I picked it up at that Zeller's, but my family was taking me to like a family friends out of town, so I had to sit for an entire week and just stare at this thing and not play it, and it drove me crazy. And the sad thing is, this is hardly the best version of it. It's got the terrible PS1 Mega Man 8, which they still use in all the collections today, much to my chagrin. It's swapped the jump and shoot buttons, which, it's Mega Man, those are the 2 things you do. Why are they swapped, and why can I not remap them in this collection? All the other versions get it right, it's just the GameCube version. There's just a lot of weird stuff with this, but that said, it is my introduction to the rest of the Mega Man collection, and it's a very personally important game to me. Although I remember also when this came out really wishing they'd make a Mega Man X collection, because I was, with the exception of Mega Man 7, far more familiar with Mega Man X. Well, little did I know there would be one eventually. And we are back with my 2 lovely, lovely assistants that I forgot to put back on my shelf with the latter half of my GameCube collection. Well, it's my cat who just ran out the door and is probably going to make a bunch of noise. But we are continuing with the Mega Man X collection. Hell yeah. This is a collection of Mega Man X 1 through 6. It does not include 7, which is probably for the best. It does not include 8, which is unfortunate. But it does contain Rockman Battle and Chase, a PlayStation 1 Japanese exclusive Mega Man kart racer, which is very janky, very clumsy, and a ton of fun. Still, I have problems with this, like the previous collection, but unlike the previous collection, at the very least they got the jump and shoot buttons right. This one, however, once again, they picked the bad version of a game, in this case, Mega Man X3. We got the PlayStation version, which seems to be, as I understand, the same version they use for the digital versions nowadays, which still, come on, just use the good versions of stuff, damn it. But you get X1 through 3, which were relatively good. 3, again, you get a bad version with a messed up soundtrack. You get 4, which I've always considered every Mega Man with the number 4 terrible, and this one is no exception. Rockman X5, which was, well, it was terribly translated. That said, X6 was pretty good, even though a lot of people don't like Mega Man X after a certain point. And to be fair, X's story actually kind of ends with X4, but Capcom decided, hey, let's continue the series on. So you might notice this with Zero Story if you ever play those games. Every single one of the games ends identically for him, and that's because starting with X4, it was supposed to lead into Zero, which they kept pushing back, so everything recurs to the same point. But it's a decent collection, albeit one that kind of messed up some stuff. Anyway, next we have a enhanced remake of a game that everyone tells me is awful, but I find superior to the original. We have the Twin Snakes. This is my ideal way of playing Metal Gear Solid. A lot of people dislike this, mostly because the voice acting is, well, they changed some accents and stuff. But on the bright side, every single one of these voice actors actually gets properly credited instead of using a pseudonym in this version. All the characters actually have faces, which I really appreciate from a visual standpoint, because the PS1 version, even back in the day, kind of just looked weird to me. And from a gameplay perspective, at the very least, you can aim. Like, how revolutionary is that? Okay, granted, it's on the GameCube controller, and to aim you have to hold down the Z button, which is like the worst thing ever. The GameCube controller was not made for FPSs. But I think this is the ideal way to play Twin Snakes, or Metal Gear Solid. And apparently this is really hard to find and rare. I saw it at GameStop for like 10 bucks and I grabbed it. But there was something weird about this, and I'm trying to read it on the back. I'll cut it out of here, but it says, enjoy the greatest games of all time, games with an S being plural. Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty are fused together. Now, when I read that, and I don't think I'm wrong in doing this, when I read that, it sounds like this is a compilation of Metal Gear 1 and 2. It's not. It's original Metal Gear Solid, but with the aiming mechanics of Metal Gear Solid 2. I think that's terribly, terribly misleading, and I've seen one or two online posts confused about where Metal Gear Solid 2 is in this, so they should have done that better, but that is my ideal way to play Metal Gear Solid 2. It's also my second of 3 games that requires 2 discs, although my second disc is a bit finicky when it wants to work. Alright, next we have a monumentally important game to me, Metroid Prime. And for those keeping track at home, this is a very early printing of Metroid Prime with all the fun bugs and glitches and out-of-boundsy things in it, which is fun for me. You know, I've done some FPSs on this channel, and I play FPSs quite frequently. I'm more of a fun, old-school, arcadey, painkiller, time-splitters kind of guy, not a Call of Duty kind of guy, but when I started, you know, the first FPS I was introduced to, like many people out there, was Doom, or at least the shareware version of it. And the thing is, there was a lot of reasons that made me really not want to play it. First of all, I was very much a goody two-shoes. Like, when I was a kid, I would never rent a game with an ESRB rating above my age. I remember once I rented Star Wars Rogue Squadron, and I think I was 12, just under the T rating. And I had to confess to my mom, and I was actually crying about it. She didn't care. But, you know, I didn't want to play Doom because it looked violent and scary, and a kid like me probably wasn't allowed to play it because I was so young. And really, from there, I just sort of saw every FPS as dark and scary, and I'm a wimp when it comes to horror, so I didn't want to play any of them. Well, the first FPS I ended up actually playing was Metroid Prime 2, which starts off with, like, the horrible zombies and the dark ether, and I was actually too scared to even get out of the start of that game the first time I rented it, full confession. But I was talking to, and it was ironically the same person who told me about Graffiti Kingdom, how much I hated the opening to Metroid Prime 2, and he literally sat me down, duct taped me to a chair, and made me play the opening to Metroid Prime, which was still kind of dark and scary, but goddamn was it fun. And we got down to Talon 4, and I ran around for a whole bunch, and I really wanted to get a copy of this. Unfortunately, he never brought it back to let me play it anymore, but I tracked down a copy at a GameStop for $15, and meow, says my cat, but this is my favorite Metroid game. I think Super Metroid on a technical level is a far better game because it's not pushing new technology and it's not testing the waters or anything, but I think Metroid Prime is the single best Metroid from a game experience, and this is one I will happily go back to countless times to try again. I need to find Metroid Prime 2 and 3 at some point, but I've got the original and this is the one that matters to me. I also need to get Super Metroid. That one's really special to me as well, but someday I will have more Metroid games, but Metroid Prime, that game is super important to me. Alright, next we have the source of one of my most popular videos ever. We have Phantasy Star Online, Episode 1 and 2. I still stand by all my criticisms of this game. This is an online game you can play offline, but the offline mode removes pretty much all the fun items, drops, and equipment. And I dislike that. In fact, my second time ever going on GameFAQs.com was going to GameFAQs and searching, hey, is there any way for me to get this specific item without going online? Because, you know, I didn't have any online way of playing it on a GameCube. I didn't know anyone who did. And unfortunately, no, I couldn't. And that made me very, very sad. I've sunk a ton of time into this, and it's fun as a single player thing for a while. I think you can play it in spurts. Like, I pick this up and I play it for a couple of days every year, and I get a little bit further, get a few rarer drops, but there's a lot of things I hate about this game too. First of all, it's very clumsy and clunky. Even back in the day, it felt kind of stop and start. And honestly, the drop system in this game is horrible. Like, just for a moment, ignoring everything that's online. When you start and make your character, you're given like an emblem for your character. And the thing is, your emblem is what designates every potential drop you can get. Not, you know, your drop rates, but whether or not you can get something or you can't get something. So if you want to have like ability to get every drop in the game, you actually have to make like, I think some like 8 or 9 different characters. And what's even stupider is you don't get to pick your emblem. It's not assigned through any real logic. It's given to you based on your character's name. So if you want a specific thing, you might not name your character something specific, but might give them like some really dumb name to get a specific drop, which there's so many things about that I hate. But Phantasy Star Online was pretty cool in the sense that it was an MMO that wasn't doing the whole WoW thing of, you know, click on an enemy and then your character just sort of whacks at it until it dies or you die. In this one, it's an action RPG where you have to time your attacks and figure out the best attacks for your character. Every class, every race, every weapon type all plays slightly differently, and finding what works best for you was a really thrilling experience. I mean, there's a reason why even today people still play it, although I prefer Phantasy Star Online 2, and I've got a very, very long review I'm working on in the meantime to talk about that. But this game was good for some time, although I hear there is like an enhanced version for the GameCube as well you could get that I don't have. A game I'm significantly less positive about, Phantasy Star Online 3, or Episode 3, Card Revolution. This reminds me of an old VG Cats comic I read once where, I think it was Final Fantasy XI, where one of the cats was like playing a card game in Final Fantasy XI that was like playing Final Fantasy XI, and the other one walks up and is like, okay, you play your little card game about smacking things with swords, I'm just gonna go smack things with swords. That's what this game is. It's a bad card game based on an online game you like. Or at least I hope you like. This is a very asymmetrical game, and I love the concept of asymmetrical gameplay, but it's really badly done. I'm working off memory here, because I only played this twice, and the rounds in this game take forever. Like, I remember I played like 3 matches in this, and it took probably 10 hours. It was a very, very long game, but basically when you start, you can pick one of 2 sort of factions to join, light or dark, or as I like to call it, the people who get their ass kicked and the people who win a lot. The light people, they get one character in the game, like in the actual card game bit, and all of their cards are designed to basically enhance and upgrade it, whereas the dark people, they get to summon things. So you've got the light people kind of healing themselves and getting better equipment every turn, whereas the dark people just surround them with a bunch of different monsters and rush them constantly. It's very one-sided. I don't think I've ever seen a light character ever win. And it's very long, it's very drawn out. I find this terribly boring, and I'd rather just play an MMO where I get to, you know, smack things with a sword instead of playing cards about smacking things with a sword. That game is really bad. I've been meaning to review that for a very, very long time. Alright, next we have a game I actually haven't played, and that's mainly because when I bought it, I accidentally thought I was getting a different game I really wanted. We have Rave Master, which is a fighting game based on an anime. I got this at a sort of like used game shop for a couple of bucks. I actually thought I was getting Ribbit King, which was sitting next to it on the shelf, but I had to run, so I like grabbed it without noticing. I've heard this game's a lot like Power Stone, and that's exciting. I'm gonna have to try it, but I really wanted to play Ribbit King. This sounds a lot more down my alley. I hope nothing's too janky because my camera just stopped. I don't know why, but every other record I do, it decides at the halfway mark Oh, recording stopped. I don't know how to get rid of that function, but anyway, this is like an anime fighting thing, and it looks interesting, but I've never actually played it. I'm not really familiar with the anime it's based off of. I really need to, get up on my anime, I guess, but, I guess we're gonna have to give it a shot for this video, so there is that. Next week I have another game I haven't played, but I got it in a bundle for like a couple bucks last year. We got Second Sight, which I think is like a horror first-person shooter. It's the kind of game that, going back to Metroid, as a kid I would have never played because it doesn't sound like my kind of thing, and in fact sounds exactly like the kind of thing I wouldn't want to play because that's my perception on FPSs. I think I read that this was like a weird game where you could sort of like hide and see from like the perspective of your enemies at times, sort of like a second person camera type of deal. It was weird from what I heard, although I might be confusing this with one of the Clive Barker games, or it might be both games for all I know. Don't know too much about this, but it's an FPS looking thing on the GameCube, and the GameCube controller didn't exactly do FPSs with any degree of mastery, so I'm not super excited about it. But at the same time, it is another thing for us to take a look at, so at some point I will make a review of that. Alright, our next game is a game I've wanted to stream for a very, very long time, and it's a very, very important game of mine. And if this were exclusive to the GameCube, I would say this would be one of the best, in fact, the best GameCube exclusive. But it ain't. We have one of my favorite games of all time, Skies of Arcadia Legends. What this game is Sky Pirate RPG on the GameCube. This is an enhanced remake, sorta, of a Dreamcast classic that I really want to get a hold of at some point. This game is hard to find, and this was actually a Christmas present for me, I think the year after I graduated from college, so about 6 or 7 years ago now. And, I love this game. It's a very, very long game, and it's very brutally difficult at times. I remember the first time I played, I actually got stuck, because there's a lot of like unlockables and titles you get based on the dialogue choices you make in gameplay, and if you pick the exact wrong ones, you don't get the right titles, and after a certain point, you actually lock yourself out of like all the side content. So, learn to be a good pirate is the short version of that. But it's not really an enhanced port of the Dreamcast version, because while it does contain all the downloadable content of the Dreamcast version, and it features a much better encounter rate, because the Dreamcast version was insanely high. It's still pretty high here from what I remember. This thing also features censorship, which if you're against, and it's very mild stuff, mind you, they removed alcohol and stuff, and they kind of reclothed the belly dancer slightly, but other than that, it's basically a better version. It has an extra chapter the Dreamcast version doesn't have. It has all the DLC that you could get online in-game. Has a bunch of other stuff you couldn't get in the Dreamcast version. This is just, it's a damn good RPG, and it's easily my top 10 favorite games of all time. I love Skies of Arcadia Legends. I've played through it so many times, and honestly, I want to kind of do a full Let's Play of it sometime in the near future. Alright, next we have Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut. I used to have every single Sonic game for the GameCube. Unfortunately, before I started this channel, a little bit before that, I actually had a huge chunk of my collection stolen, and some of my Sonic games on the GameCube were taken as well, including the Sonic Rider games, Shadow the Hedgehog, and Sonic Heroes. But if I want those games back, they'll be purely for finishing that collection yet again. This game I'm quite fond of, but I don't think it's a great game. I think it's honestly an affront to pretty much all the senses and game design sensibility. It's horribly buggy and glitchy, and yet it's an absolute classic in my mind. And this particular version happens to have all the awesome Game Gear unlockables, including a kind of wonky, like visually darkened version of Tails Adventure, which is like the greatest Game Gear game of all time. It also features the terrible, terrible Tails Sky Patrol. But it's Sonic Adventure, and I have very fond memories of Sonic Adventure. The first time I played it was years after the Dreamcast came out. It was, probably 2005 or so, I think. And I had to travel across the country with my dad to go see my grandfather, and he decided on the way back we were going to do it all in one night, and we couldn't do it. We ended up stopping at like one of his work friend's house, And his kid had a Dreamcast, and I played it, and I unlocked everything for him in one night because he didn't know how to play his own games, I guess. But I had very fond memories of, that was like the only time I had a Dreamcast in my hands before I bought one and like had 2 broken ones for this channel. And you know, even though I played it very, very briefly, I still have very fond memories of this. And in fact, when I first got Sonic Adventure 2, our next game, I actually thought it was going to be of a similar structure. This is Sonic Adventure 2. This is my #1 original GameCube game. For the longest time until Animal Crossing came out, this was the only GameCube game I had, and I have sunk so many hours in that I've actually broken the in-game timer. It's like stuck at 999, like 99. And I actually did try speedrunning this for a little bit. I think I found a couple of bugs in this game no one else knows about, which is kind of interesting, but when I first got this, like, I couldn't play it because I was, you know, I was just sort of getting really excited to play it, but I had to hook everything up and I had to do some other stuff first. But I said, you know, if it's going to be like Sonic Adventure, where every character has like their own story, I'm going to be my boy Knuckles first. I'm going to go through like the treasure hunts, and I'm going to raise my own KOs, and it's going to be awesome because I love the KOs, and it's pronounced KO and not Chow because it comes from the word chaos. Fun fact. But unfortunately, it's grouped by character, and the 2 characters I really gravitated towards the most, Shadow and Knuckles, they have the least number of levels in the game, which I found to be kind of garbage. But I love Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. I've played so many goddamn hours of this game. I love this game. I have found every bug and trick in this game you could ever imagine. I mean, the first video on my channel officially is a glitch from Sonic Adventure 2, breaking the truck in the first level. I just wanted to test something out, and I decided to post that, and you know, that worked out pretty well. I love this game. This is a very, very fond game for me, and I will probably still play this many, many years in the future. The disc may be knackered and messed up, but it still runs like a dream, and well, I'm very happy to have a copy of this. Alright, and we're continuing the Sonic collection with the Sonic Gems collection, although I feel like gems should be in quotes, because it's talking about 3 must-have hits, including Sonic CD. Spoilers, that's the only gem. Because the other 2 gems are Sonic R, a game that I'm kind of fond of, but isn't all that great because it's got terrible controls. If they fix the controls, it would actually be kind of, sort of decent. And Sonic the Fighters, a game that is, I'm pretty sure, existing purely as a joke by the guys who made Fighting Vipers. Overall, it's an interesting collection. It also contains some of the Game Gear stuff that you can find on Sonic Adventure DX, as well as, I think, Vectorman, Vectorman 2, and I want to say Dynamite Heady. I know that Sonic CD is kind of the big draw for this one, and to be fair, you can get that digitally. In fact, you can get a superior version digitally now for like $1 when it's on sale, so this might not be the best version to play, but I remember during my grade 8 year, every Friday night I would play through I would play through Vectorman with like a cola slushie and a bag of beef jerky. That was my Friday night every week, and I still remember that quite fondly. I got a lot of use out of the Gems collection. Not a lot of actual gems on it, mind you, but I think it was still a decent collection. Alright, now we have an actual collection that I would say is of gems. We have the Sonic Mega Collection. Now, how I got this was along with Sonic Adventure DX. And I got this in a really peculiar way. In fact, I'm kind of surprised I forgot to mention this with Sonic Adventure DX, but I don't know if schools even do this anymore, but when I was a kid, every month you get like these leaflets made of like really thin, super shitty tissue paper by like some school-funded company called Scholastic, and they'd be full of like these overpriced, really bad books. And one time they had Sonic Mega Collection and Sonic Adventure DX like bundled together for $20. Now, you know, I'm in junior high, I don't have a lot of money, but I managed to somehow make enough to get these 2 games. But that isn't where it ended, because normally you'd like put them in like an envelope and you'd hand it to your teacher, and then eventually you'd get it through the school mail or whatever. And yeah, instead we were directed to go to the nearest Sears to hand this into some employee there when they would hand us the games. It was the strangest thing ever. But you have Sonic, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, plus bonus features, extra games, as it says on the cover, including Sonic Pinball, Sonic 3D Blast, which I know everyone hates Sonic 3D Blast. I agree with the Genesis version, which is the version on here, but I played the Saturn version, which actually had some really awesome music and was a lot better, I think. Got to get a copy of the Saturn version at some point to show it off, but yet I also had a few other games on here, and it was a pretty solid collection. That said, the PS2 and the Xbox got a better version of this. That was called Mega Collection Plus, that had everything in this, plus more. And to be fair, this collection is still inferior to the Sega Saturn Sonic, Jam Collection, which not only was a collection that came with actual physical jams, but also came with every permutation of the first 3 Sonic games you could imagine, as well as tons of extras, and a secret 3D planet world full of challenges and bonus features. So basically it was the best Sonic collection ever. But this one is not a bad one for the GameCube. I think it's a more reliable pick than Gem's collection, but I will say that once again, there's a better version. Alright, anyway, we go with another game I traded my girlfriend for, and this has quickly become one of my favorite fighting games of all time. We have Soul Calibur 2 with good old Link. In fact, this was the Soul Calibur that introduced cameo characters. I believe the PS2 version had Tekken's Yoshimitsu, which kind of makes sense since he was a samurai robot guy. And then, if I recall, the Xbox version had Todd McFarlane's Spawn for some reason. But this version has Link, which makes it by default the coolest version. But more importantly, it's also a fighting game that has like an adventure element to it. I streamed this a few times and I've got a full review of it, but you could go into like this adventure mode where it would like proceed to give you fights, but they'd be fights with different permutations, like enemy is invisible, your health is constantly drained, there's heavy wind, and you have to fight with these different permutations to get like new stats, new weapons, new equipment. It felt almost like an RPG, and anytime you can make a fighting game an RPG, I'm immediately a million times more interested. I like fighting games, but I'm terrible at them, but I love RPGs. And Soul Calibur 2 is easily one of my favorite fighting games I've gotten in a long time, and I think it would be on a list of the best fighting games of all time. But if you're gonna get one, get the version with Link, because, well, I mean, why would you want the version with Spawn? That's just weird. Okay, next we have probably the only GameCube game that's actually managed to not skyrocket in price. Like recently, for whatever reason, GameCube games have just gotten insane in prices. But this one, even since its launch, has always sort of maintained $15 and been readily available and collectible on the cheap. We have Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader, a game I got like last year. Every year I keep thinking I'm gonna buy this, and every year I don't. I remember I rented this for my birthday once, and I was just blown away by the training area, which is set on, of course, the desert planet of Tatooine, but it's set to your GameCube's clock. And there's like, I think something like 4 to 8 different permutations depending on when you played. And the environment and the challenges and the secrets you could find all changed. I didn't like this game as much as the original Rogue Squadron. It didn't have as many levels, it didn't have as many ships, it didn't have as many secrets, but it was a great game for the GameCube. And I don't think it was a launch title, but I think it was near launch, so I attribute it to being a launch title quite frequently. And I gotta say, this was a damn good launch title, even if it wasn't one. And it being one of the cheapest GameCube games to collect now, I think everyone needs this in their collection. It's just nowhere near as good as the first one. Although it is on the GameCube, so it controls better because it doesn't have to deal with the N64 controller. On the other side of that, we have Rogue Squadron 3 Rebel Strike. This game is a piece of garbage. This is Rogue Squadron 3, you know that series about fun flying around in your spaceship Star Wars action? If you take your guy out of the spaceship and make it an awkward third-person shooter where you can't aim at shit and have to rely on a really crappy auto-targeting. The sad thing is there's a fair number of levels here, multiple playable characters with multiple stories, and like just a massive swath of content, which was really what the previous one was missing. But most of it's on foot and bad, and the sad thing is the parts where you're flying are really, really damn good, because it's Factor 5 doing what they did best, which was making Rogue Squadron. Problem is, about 80% of the game is not Rogue Squadron, and it's just bad. And I remember back then just being massively disappointed with this game. Playing it now, I'm even more so. This game is just garbage. It's a smear on the legacy that is Rogue Squadron. Alright, next we have one of my all-time favorite games, bar none, and one of the longest games I've ever played as well. We have Tales of Symphonia. This game is so cool. Here's the story. Okay, remember that guy I mentioned who got me Amazing Island and we played Sonic with? Okay, he was sleeping over at my house one day, and it was middle of the night, huge blizzard, and I really wanted to play Tales of Symphonia. I was talking about how awesome this game was because I rented it from our local game store once. And he said, all right, we'll go rent it. Well, it was about a 40-minute walk in a blizzard, and we almost died. And I swear he wanted to kill me, but I got back home, we sat down, we played this, and I swear, like, he lived almost in basically another town, and every weekend for like the next 2 months, he would show up at my house just to help me play this and finish it, because we had set up a pact to play this game. This is such a good RPG. I want to do a full playthrough this someday. There's moments where the plot splits, and it can get really, really difficult. Again, I'm just going to talk about another story I had with this guy. We went to fight the super boss of this game, which you don't normally want to fight unless you're at least level 80 on normal. Well, I had accidentally set the difficulty to the hardest difficulty setting because I wanted a special in-game title, and I didn't swap it back, and we were level 30. And that fight took you, I am not even joking, like 8 hours. We sat there for pretty much a full day on this one fight against the boss who could one-shot you. And, well, there's a lot of, like, background mechanics and stuff, like, depending on your character's connections and stuff. Like, this is our summoner. If you made her super friends with the main character, man, Lloyd here, she would go into a summoning state every time he got hit, and that was the only way we could beat that boss. I've got so many fond memories of this. It's a shame the sequel wasn't as good. It's a shame the Tales of series has kind of gone downhill so hard. This is easily one of my top 10 favorite games of all time as well, and easily one of the best GameCube games. Not an exclusive anymore, however. So Gotcha Force is still the best exclusive. Next we have a game I would recommend you get for anything else but the GameCube, because again, it's an FPS. We have Time Splitters 2. Not as good as Time Splitters 3, I'll just say that, but it's a damn good game, and it's better than the first one. It's an amazing time-traveling sort of quantum leap adventure starring our boy Sergeant Cortez over here. Some amazing, like, arena shooter style, and it's a fast action-oriented shooter, which is absolutely my kind of FPS. Throw in like an infinite number of playable characters and challenges and tons of stuff. You have one of the coolest shooters of all time. I'm sad this series hasn't continued. There was supposed to be like an HD version for the PS4 that was announced like almost 10 years ago now, and there was supposed to be like a Time Splitters 4. None of that's ever come out. Probably won't ever. I think Crytek owns this rights to this game now, and they just haven't done anything with it, and it makes me sad because Time Splitters is the best FPS series I have ever played, bar none. Alright, next we have a game I've reviewed, and I would call this sort of like edgy, dark Zelda. We have Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, and this is actually now available on the Switch apparently, which is pretty cool. This is an interesting game because it takes place in 2 phases. First you have the phase where you play as Sphinx, and every chapter is mostly this guy, but in between you play as the Prince, which I want to say is either Imhotep or Tutankhamun, one of those Egyptian guys. Sphinx sort of plays like a platforming action adventure game, kind of like Zelda, and a really, really fun style of Zelda. There's items to collect, there's things that'll instant kill you if you don't do things well, there's tons of power-ups and equipment to acquire. It's a ton of absolute fun. In between, you play as the Mummy, who is more sort of like a point-and-click adventure puzzle game, except that all the puzzles are based around like completely disemboweling yourself. Like, you run into a series of blades and suddenly you split into like 12 different mummies, and you have to sit on like 12 different buttons to activate a door or something. It's a really interesting contrast in game concepts, and I think it works really, really well. I like this game a lot. I wouldn't put it in the top upper echelons or anything, but I think this is a pretty good B tier game for the GameCube. And I don't think it was ever very expensive. I think I bought this game for like 99 cents or something. It wasn't expensive, but it was a fun game, and I like it a lot, and I might have to get it on the Switch now. Alright, now we've got a game that has been re-released in a Mario collection that I am not really fond of the fact it exists because it feels like a low-quality effort, but we have Super Mario Sunshine, which I think is like the most innovative and last really creative Mario game, and probably the last really truly good one. I know a lot of people like to point at Mario Galaxy with the whole world walking sphere nonsense, but I'll also point out that Yoshi's Island did that for a boss fight, so it's really not that creative. This game has a lot of problems. It has a lot of pointless collectibles, it has a lot of time-wasty stuff, and yet I still think it's probably the best 3D Mario game. I certainly don't think it's Odyssey. I think Odyssey's a bad game, but I love Super Mario Sunshine, and I remember watching the trailers for this game long before it came out. I remember going to, in fact, it was once again that same Zellers, and they were handing out like postcards for Mario Sunshine, and I still have some in a lockbox because I figured, you know, these are fun little collectibles. Maybe I'll show them off sometime. But Mario Sunshine, it has some really stupid things in it. It's got some awful levels. It's got a pachinko themed level, which is abysmal. It has the Poison River. Don't get me started on that. And yet, I still think this is the best, most interesting Mario game. It's a game based around two concepts: resource management and ascension, because you've got this little water jetpack flood here that runs on water and is all about gaining height and stuff. And you got some of the most interestingly designed levels ever. I think this is easily the best 3D Mario game of all time. Kind of sad they never went back and made a sequel to this or anything, but you know, with the new one, maybe they'll drum up some buzz for it or something. Alright, now, a few minutes ago I talked about gritty grimdark Zelda. Well, here's gritty grimdark Mario. It's Vex. I hate this game. I rented it once when I was younger, and I remember really liking it and thinking it was interesting. I remember getting this just to review a few years back, and it was awful. Like, I know in that review, I basically spent like the first hour trying to get like this one collectible, which is a beating heart, just to show you how edgy this game is. And it was like a platforming challenge that was really stupidly done, because it lacked like textures to show depth and stuff. But I played more of it than I just showed, and yeah, it's just not that good. I mean, if you can get a cheap copy, like I got this for $2, maybe, but I mean, it's also by Acclaim, and what have they ever done that was good? And don't say Turok. But Vex, if Sphinx is like a B tier game for the GameCube, I would say this one is like a D tier game. It's a game you can fill out your collection with, but it's nothing all that special. However, we do have a game that is very personally important to me, and a very cool game. We have the last game on our collection, Zoids Battle Legends. Now, growing up, I was a big fan of Zoids. Every Friday night after elementary school, I would run home, and at 4:30, I would watch an episode of Zoids New Century Zero, and I loved it so much, I bought the entire DVD set in high school, and I still have them. But this game was one of those things, sort of like Mischief Makers or Portal, where, or even Gotcha Force, come to think of it, where I saw it in a couple of game rental stores. Specifically, this one was in a Rogers Video, and I wanted to rent it for the longest time, but I'd always talk myself out, like, it doesn't look that good, it doesn't look that good. And then the one time nothing else was available, I was like, fine, I'll just get this. And I rented this for a birthday as well. And it turned out to be amazing. Like, it's a very jank game, it's a very unbalanced game, but it is a blast to play. It's sort of like a 3D, sort of third-person shooter, adventure, fighting game. It's actually kind of a lot like Gotcha Force, if a lot jankier. The voice acting is garbage, though, and the translation is just straight up bad. But you know what? I love Zoids Battle Legends, and I actually have some history with it, because this personal copy of mine, well, as I've said numerous times, my family hates video games, and I wasn't allowed to ask for them for presents or anything. And one summer, I was at a barbecue for my uncle's, and we needed to go and get some sort of snack for after we ate the barbecue, and my uncle suggested like an ice cream cake. But my grandfather's celiac, so he can't have that, so I suggest we just go to Dairy Queen and get like a bucket of ice cream, and we did that. But we couldn't just go and get it. We had to sit and wait for them to prepare it, because I guess they were out or something. And in the meantime, I went to the GameStop and I saw they had this for, I believe it was like $20. And this game is hard to find, even back then. Not rare, well, it probably is rare, but it's not wanted or anything, but it's just hard to find. And it was $20. I was a kid in junior high, I had no money, and you know, I put it back and I left. And that Christmas, like 6 months later, I got a special present from my grandfather, and he got this for me. And that's the thing, I literally was not allowed to ask for games as presents. In fact, my parents actually yelled at me for about 2 months straight over this game. And, well, first of all, this is a very cool game. It's very special to me because I've got such an affinity for Zoids, but my grandfather has always meant the world to me. He was always a superhero to me, and I always looked up to him. He was the only person growing up who ever listened to me and ever really treated me fair. And for him to go out and notice that I was so interested in this and to get it to me as a special present, it makes it a very, very, very special game for me. I'm very proud I have this, and even if it wasn't worth any sort of monetary value, this is one of the most personally valuable games in my collection, I think. My grandfather's now no longer with us, and it makes me very, very sad. This is the 5-year anniversary since he passed away, actually, but I will always have this game, and I will always have the memories, and nothing can ever take that away from me. And that is just a small bit of my personal history and my GameCube collection, and part of why this was such an important console for me. It was with me in my formative years. It was the first console I ever owned that I bought with my own money, and it was the first one I was ever really able to collect for. And that just is very special to me. I know I don't have every game I used to have. I used to have a copy of Mega Man X Command Mission. That was actually the very last game owned by my local game rental store, Bonus Video, back before they folded, and someone stole that along with a couple other of my games, which I'm still very, very bitter about, mainly because of memories more than anything. But you know, I don't have every GameCube game I ever wanted. I don't have Double Dash, I don't have Paper Mario, Eternal Darkness, Chibi Robo. I think there's a game called Rune Seeker that was like a 2-part game. It was an RPG, someone will correct me on the name. I think it started with an R anyway. There was a lot of GameCube games left for me to collect, and I would love to hear about your game collection and what games you think I should collect for the GameCube. And hey, if you're thinking of getting rid of some of your GameCube games, let me know, because I'm always collecting. Don't have a ton of money, but you know, I'm interested. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and next time will be Wii, which will be the last Nintendo console game we've got. I won't be doing handhelds for a while yet, so our next ones will either be after that Sega stuff or Sony stuff, and I'm gonna let that be a vote by the Discord. So if you have a personal opinion of what you'd like to see next after the Wii, you know, go support the channel through the Patreon or my PayPal, get on the Discord, and let your voice be heard. But anyway, you know, use the comments, let me know what sort of games you like, which ones you regret owning, which ones you think I should get, all that good stuff. Leave the channel a like if you do, so that we can get some visibility, because that's a constant problem I have. And, you know, support the channel if you can, because that is a ton of help for me, because this is not cheap to do, and this is my sole source of income. Please help me, damn it, I need money. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will be back next with the Wii, hopefully in a month. Again, I'm trying to deal with a whole bunch of family stuff and medical stuff and personal stuff, but I'm doing my best to get on top of that. I apologize again. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. I can't wait to hear about your GameCube collection, and from me and my two lovely Gotcha Borg assistants, peace out, Internet.